Hey YouTube, my name is Stephen Rylander. I wanted to talk to you about the Canon AE-1. This is a great camera. This was my first camera that I ever used. I was given it by a family member and they had used it traveling through Australia, traveling through Indonesia for a long period of time, and that was in the late 70s and early 80s. And I was gifted this and I learned photography on this camera. What I like about this camera starting out is the ability for you to understand the relationship between ISO, or the sensitivity of the film, and the aperture and shutter speed. Now it's all manual, and so you have to be able to understand the relationship between all of those elements to be able to set your exposure properly. Now it has an internal metering system, and so when you look through the viewfinder and you point it at whatever subject you're wanting to shoot, you'll be able to understand how you want the aperture to be set based on the shutter speed that you're setting. And you set your shutter speed here, and then you actually set your aperture on the lens itself. It's really the foundation for any future photography that you're wanting to do, no matter if you go into, let's say, medium format film photography, large format film photography, or even digital. I really appreciate learning photography on this camera for that reason, because going to any other camera, and I have a background also in film production, and going even into film motion picture cameras, those principles are all the same. And so by understanding on a simple camera like this that takes really beautiful photos, you will have a foundation that will allow you to move into these other modes of photography, whether it be motion picture or whether it be larger format cameras. So when I received this camera, I took one photography class and shot a bunch, and then I went to Mexico and I hitchhiked in Mexico with this camera. And that's another advantage of a camera like this, is it's inexpensive. You can pick these cameras up for less than $200, and the major expense afterwards is just the film. And what I like about that, especially when it comes to traveling, is if you get it lost or stolen, it doesn't cost a lot of money to be able to replace this. And if it fails on you, again, it's not very expensive to just buy another one. I mean, you can pick these up for less than $250. And to me, it's absolutely worth it. And for somebody that's just starting out in photography, it's hard to beat that price. Fortunately, I never got it stolen. I never lost it. And I have all these photos that I'm still really happy with to this day. And anyways, let's just dig into some of these photos, and you can see what it does. And when I first arrived in Mexico, I landed in Mexico City, and what was prevalent when I arrived was the presence of military. And as many people know, there's a lot of conflict in Mexico due to drug wars, and this image definitely sets the tone for what it was like in Mexico. I mean, it's a very peaceful place in a lot of areas, but military presence is prevalent. And I look at this photo, and it's very representative of what we experienced when we were there. I look back and really reminisce, and I quite like this photo. I think the composition, it feels cinematic. I really like the red shutters with the green military outfits, and with the blue sky. I think that it complements itself really nicely. Something to take note is I haven't edited any of these images in terms of color correction at all. So everything that you see is true to camera and represented from the digital scans. After leaving Mexico City, I went to Oaxaca City by bus to meet up with a friend. And what I noticed about that town was how colorful and vibrant it was. It's known for its coffee shops and art galleries. and I was fortunate to be able to take pictures of some of the most beautiful colors that I'd ever seen in a town before. And after we spent a few weeks in Oaxaca, we ended up going to a town named San Jose del Pacifico, which is a mountain town that has a pretty hippie vibe, as you can probably see from these images. We ended up traveling with a few people, and it was a really cool experience because there was a mix of travelers. There was people from Mexico, there was people from Argentina and Canada, which is where we're from, and I was able to take some interesting photos of some of the fellow travelers. After leaving this town, we made our way to the coast, and with the hope that we were going to get into some saltwater lagoons to have first-hand experiences with wild crocodiles, and on the way we found this plane wreck that had clearly been there for a while, and there was no story behind it. We found it and took some photos, and still don't know if it's cleaned up to this day. The highlight of the trip in total was a town named Santa Maria Shadani, and it's a small town, doesn't experience a lot of tourism. My friend had heard about this shaman that did a lot of work with kids who are handicapped in the community, and we had the great fortune of being able to stay with some of the local people and experience the therapy sessions that Elizabeth would put on for the kids. At this time in my photography, I wasn't paying much attention to the film stocks that I was using, and what you'll probably notice is that some of these black and white images are quite grainy, and I actually particularly like grain. I think that it has a very film look to it, which is what I appreciate, and there's a lot of texture within the images as a result. But that's something that any new photographer is going to want to look at, is the types of film stocks that suit them the best. Total time that we spent in Mexico was about 2 months, and this period of time in this small town of Santa Maria Shadani was a highlight, and I still look back on it today, and it was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. After we left this small town, we spent a month in San Cristobal, which is in the most southern province of Mexico, which is where I took this photo. If you are thinking about getting into photography, I highly recommend this camera because it's simple to use, it's inexpensive, and it will give you a foundation for film photography and photography in general for the future. And you'll be set up with a really good understanding of the principles of photography, so that when you go into more advanced photographic situations and more complex lighting setups, you'll have a really strong understanding of how to operate a camera and how to manipulate light for the advantage of a beautiful image. Anyways, thanks for checking out the video, you guys. Appreciate it. If you guys want to see more content like this, please give me a like, give me a subscribe. Check out my Instagram, that's linked down below. And yeah, you guys have a good day.